Hey guys, it's Horror Free for All, better known as Goosebumps Completionist, and I hope you're doing well today. So, I have here a book review of a movie novelization of one of the Goosebumps films. Now, I decided to review the novelization of the second movie, so we're going to be looking at Goosebumps Haunted Halloween movie novel, aka Goosebumps 2 Haunted Halloween, aka Goosebumps 2, whatever you want to call it. So this novel, like the movie, is written by a fellow named Rob Lieber. And the book here, the novelization, was edited by R.L. Stine himself. And I have to say up front, I only wanted to read this novelization because it was around Halloween this year and I wanted a Goosebumps Halloween read, and this is one of the only ones I had left. So I decided to read it. And boy, oh boy, was I tremendously surprised by how much I love this book. This is one of those times in Goosebumps when you see these novelizations come out where there's some changes to the original material that make it worthwhile to come visit the book. And in my opinion, I think that this book added some things that took the kitty gloves off of the movie and added some things that were well appreciated, to me at least, to the point where on my enjoyability of this book alone, honestly, I'm going to get way ahead of myself when I say this, but I'm going to give this a perfect score of 5 out of 5 stars. This might be one of my all time favorite Goosebumps books ever made. However, because this is a movie novelization, these reviews tend to go down the route of looking at its adaptation in the medium compared to the original material as a supplement to it. So basically, how I rate these on a review basis normally is how faithful it is to the original idea of the story, which would be the finished released movie. So a 5 out of 5, for example, would be like this is basically the movie to book. Anything less than that, there's some changes to be had. Now, this is one of the more faithful ones. So if you like Goosebumps 2 Haunted Halloween, um, you probably would really like this book. But this is one of the few examples I will tell you that if you didn't like the book, you can probably watch the movie. But if you didn't like the movie, you can probably read the book and like that more. You know what I mean? Um, I would definitely recommend that you watch the movie first and then read this, so that way you don't spoil yourself going into the movie. And also don't sour your expectations thinking that some scenes that are in this book aren't in there. You know what I mean? So it's a catch 22, but either way you want to go, at least experience both of them within a relative short amount of time from each other, or maybe watch the movie and then eventually come to this. That's how I would recommend that you go about reading this thing. So yeah, with that out the way, I'm going to kind of run down what the novel is, and then we'll get into my review. So, the novel is like the movie, except I'm going to kind of highlight some points that are a bit different here to kind of accentuate them so you can kind of understand the changes here. So, like the movie, we have basically three main characters that we see throughout the film. We see them on the cover here. We have Sarah, who's a 17-year-old who wants to attend Columbia University, which is a school, I think, in New York City. We have her younger brother, Sonny, who I think is 13, and he is a science whiz. He's kind of a genius in town, and he has a good friend named Sam, who's also 13, and Sam runs a junk collecting business that he's roped his friend Sonny into. So basically, the story revolves around these three, like I said, and we get pretty much hitting the ground running with Sarah, getting to understand that she's trying to write a college admissions letter to Columbia University, which has to be an essay, and she's struggling writing it, even though she's a creative writing hope to be major in college. And we see that Sonny is working on a model size version of this Tesla tower that happens to be in their town called Wardenclyffe, which is a town in New York, I believe on Long Island, which is not too far away from New York City. And I guess Sonny has taken a lot of appreciation of the tower in town and the backstory and the lore and all of that. And then, Sam, he's just kind of the comedic relief character in the story, but his father is going away for 3 days, I guess, to a vacation of sorts or maybe an out of town meeting. And Sam is going to be staying with Sonny and Sarah's family for a few days up until Halloween night. So, going from there, essentially, it plays out like the movie. Like, we get introduced to a situation where Sarah's boyfriend tries to break into her room, and this causes a whole snafu, and this introduces the mom of the story, who's played by Wendy McClendon Covey in the film. I think her name is Kathy, as the character name. And Kathy, she's a single mom. She works double shifts at a retirement community, and she's always away from home. And she relies on Sarah a lot of the time to watch Sonny, which plays a role later on in this book here, just like the movie. But early on, we see that Sarah's kind of going through, being embarrassed, that she got caught with her boyfriend and all that. And it's even more embarrassing when her mom takes them out to go shopping for, I guess, some groceries and a few things for the retirement community, and seeing her mom flirt with the store manager at the pharmacy named Walter. You can definitely tell that she wants to get out of this small town so that way she can kind of find herself and get away from the embarrassment for a little while. But, shortly in, about I would say maybe 20, 30 pages into the book, we basically hit the ground running where the movie really starts to pick up steam. Even though in the book here, there is an additional thing added on that I don't think the movie really touched on all that much. And that is there's a foreshadowing event done with Sonny when he's playing around with his Tesla tower model and in his home and basically knocks his power out and stuff like that. But essentially it arrives to the point where Sonny and Sam are, planting flyers around school for the Junk Brothers, and they, interact with this bully named Tommy. And when they arrive back to the house later on, Sam gets a call from somebody to go pick up some junk out of this house over in a nearby street. And the house happens to be vacated and abandoned, and it looks old and haunted almost. And Sonny reluctantly goes with him to go clean out the house. And when they enter it, they realize that it's basically just old and full of junk. But they find this cat statue, and when they try to take it off the mantle, it opens up a secret compartment door under the fireplace, I think. And they pull out this old trunk, and they open it up, and they find this leather-bound book. And the boys decide to open it up, and then out of nowhere, this dummy, as you see on the cover, appears in the box. And they find a card in his jacket, and it reads, "Hi, my name is Slappy." And then there's a spell on the back of the card that Sonny reads, which essentially brings Slappy to life, and that is the precursor for the rest of the story. Like the movie, the boys essentially go through this whole thing with Tommy in the street, embarrassing him in front of his friends. And it involves him getting pantsed and his underwear being exposed and all that, which is kind of weird, but it's more harmless in this than your average Goosebumps story, so it's passable. Meanwhile, with Sarah, she's going through this whole thing where she gets invited to go to this concert with her boyfriend Tyler, and she's told by her mom that that she needs to watch Sam and Sonny, so that way they don't get into mischief and destroy stuff in the house. And the reason why is that she's going to be working a double. So Sarah realizes that she's basically screwed and she's not going to be able to go to this concert. Well, later that night, she comes home. She sees that her brother and Sam are acting really suspicious about this ventriloquist dummy. And we see that Slappy has kind of made it known to Sam and Sonny that he is indeed alive, and that he wants to keep his identity of being alive a secret, essentially. Well, because they're so engrossed in that, they don't really bat an eye too much that Sarah wants to go out and go to this concert with her boyfriend. So she sneaks out. And when she goes to the concert, you get the whole scene where she sees her boyfriend making out with another girl and she gets all upset. So she comes home early and she realizes that Slappy might indeed be alive, which feeds into the next morning when she wakes up and gets real confirmation on that when Slappy is found by the mom, Kathy. And once Kathy, I guess, leaves and goes to work after playing around with Slappy, Slappy really does make it apparent to Sarah to let her know that, hey, he's alive, and starts giving his whole spiel about his intentions with the family. And Sarah tells Sonny and Sam that they need to destroy this dummy now before he becomes a problem. And it's made evidently even more clear when I forgot to touch on this, but there's a scene I think that happens beforehand, or maybe shortly after, where the dummy ends up being taken to school, and let's say Slappy does something to Tyler, the boyfriend, or I guess ex-boyfriend in this context, which makes everything even worse, right? But all this coalesces together. That's all you need to know, and they decide to go lock him up in a briefcase and try to dump his body into a lake, essentially. But that backfires, and as they're leaving the lake, Slappy essentially tells them that they really messed up and they're going to regret what they did. And then for the remaining portion of the book, like the movie, Slappy goes on his tirade where he abandons the family for a little bit, and the kids kind of have to play catch up on what's actually going on, and it involves them maybe having to go back and get that leather-bound book that was taken by Tommy the bully when they had a close call with Slappy early on in the street. And when they find the book, they realize that Slappy has come out of a unreleased Goosebumps story that was never published and was hidden away by R.L. Stine. And the story essentially involves Slappy wanting a family. And they kind of use this as a cheat sheet, and they realize that there's some emphasis on their mom and whatnot. Meanwhile, Slappy decides to also play into another part of the story where it's also revealed that Slappy essentially wants to create his own family by bringing Halloween decorations to life, because the lost Goosebumps story was called Slappy Halloween. And we see Slappy start bringing alive like a headless horseman and a balloon spider, and he goes into a pharmacy and brings to life some Goosebumps masks and some store props and stuff, and turns Walter, the store manager, into an ogre possessed by a haunted mask. And he becomes like a sidekick to Slappy. And then Slappy gets the big idea to go to the Tesla Tower and wants to use it to project his powers and abilities across the town. Because while he was alive, I didn't touch on this yet, but while he became alive early on and the kids didn't know it, Sonny was going over how the Tesla Tower worked, and Slappy got the bright idea to latch onto that to manufacture his family. And one thing leads to another. Something happens to Kathy the mom, very reminiscent to Night of the Living Dummy 3's episode, and there's a big old climactic battle. And in the weeds of it all, when the kids are getting caught up to speed with what's going on with the monsters coming to life, there's some added things that the book adds on, especially when scenes like with the gummy bears, as you see in the movie. There's some finger stabbing with actual blood going on to one of the characters. There's a whole scene involving the balloon spider when the kids realize that the mom's been captured by it, involving baby spiders popping out of the balloon and viciously attacking the kids. And then in the climax, when we see what's going to happen to Slappy, something completely different happens to Slappy than what we see in the movie, and it's way more hardcore, I should say. And then, of course, we get the same wrap-up, same ending, and all of that. But that, in a nutshell, is the novelization. So, yeah, kind of all over the place, but like I said, I want to keep it service level, and I want you guys to go into this book a little blind, even though most of you have probably seen the movie who are watching this review. I want you to see these changes that you don't see in the movie and let them be more of a surprise for you, because they sure were for me. So, with that out of the way, let's get into this. I already preluded that I think I absolutely love this book on an emotional level. And I'm going to be honest, I really don't have much flaws with this book, if at all. The one thing I think this novelization does very well, that stays true to the form of the movie, is that it keeps the third person narrative alive and well. And we weave through multiple characters in this story. I mean, we go from Slappy himself, then, of course, to Sarah and Sonny, and even Kathy at some points, which is really cool. But here we get more of an internal monologue than just dialogue that we get in the movie. And we can kind of see through the third person narrative with them, I guess, dialoguing their monologue, that there's some more character introspection here. And we get a little bit of a deeper understanding of where the characters are coming from. Most specifically, Sarah, who I think is probably the most reliable narrator of the book, because she has the most, I guess, focus of the story. And yeah, they keep basically all the plot beats of the movie there intact, but you don't have to rely on Madison Eisman's acting to portray these things as it's actually written to page on paper in the novelization. And I don't know if that was Rob Lieber's original script coming to fruition. You know, maybe they just took the script from the page and put it into this book. That's most likely what happened. But yeah, I don't know what it was about the characters, but I think they were slightly elevated here. When it comes to the atmosphere, I mean, this is chock full of Halloween atmosphere. The town of Wardenclyffe seems believable. Like, they seem like they love the Halloween time of year. Everybody's festive. Mr. Chu, the neighbor, played by, I forget his name. What is it? Kim Jung? I think that's his name. He's from the Hangover movies. He's a hilarious character in the book. And when I was reading this, I was thinking about him playing the character. And they nailed Mr. Chu in here. They basically have all of his funny jokes and quips in the movie. And even his Goosebumps fandom knowledge that I didn't touch on in the plotter review. But that's also one of the best parts about this book with his character. The Goosebumps meta-ness is still alive and well. And reading this story, I would say this is more of a metaphysical compliment to it for me. But I always thought that the movie came across like a Goosebumps book brought to screen, or at least something close to it. No, reading this thing really does remind you of reading a Goosebumps book. And it has that meta flair added onto it, which makes it even more fun, like the movie brought to it as well. So that element that worked in the movie works here well too. And yeah, all the fun plot points with the creatures coming to life on Halloween and Slappy's mischievous plans involving him wanting a family is very cool for a Goosebumps book. You know, it takes the approach kind of like what Bride of the Living Dummy did with him wanting a child bride, except here it's definitely more stomachable in my opinion, where he just wants a family. I think that's an interesting aspect. And while it's never too deeply explored, I'm kind of glad they didn't go too deep with why Slappy wants a family, because, you know, Slappy's a villain, right? If you go too deep with things, it starts to kind of feel like fan fiction-y. But the concept here, like I said, kept it to that sweet spot where it needed to be with it. And yeah, I think it really did work, just like the movie. And for this being, you know, cemented into a book, I think that this easily is in my top 2 favorite Slappy books ever made. Because the things that Slappy does in this book is really cool and very large scale and very cinematic. And I love that about this. And, you know, that just fuels to my compliment of this book just feeling cinematic and feeling true to the movie. So yeah, Slappy's great in this, and the stuff that he's able to do reminds me of why I think people really resonate with Night of the Living Dummy 2's book, and then Dummy 3 and Bride's episodes. A lot of the best stuff from those 3 things are prevalent in this. Except, you know, the rich first-person monologue with Amy from Dummy 2. You don't really get that because this book is third person. But then again, That aside, everything else, accent-wise, that you get from Slappy and those things, I think you get here, but a little bit better. So that was appreciated. And yeah, basically down to the climax and all of that, it hit like the movie and did what it needed to do. But the other things that I think that really do separate this novel and make it a must-read also make the book better, in my opinion. Now, these things are the things that stick out that make it different from the movie. So keep this in mind. I kind of already brought up the one thing about Sonny making his power go out in the beginning of the novel. I don't think that happened in the movie. But it is a good foreshadowing element to what's going to happen later, and it builds into things. There is a scene I didn't touch on, and it's so minute that it might not be worth mentioning, but there is a scene with Sarah, and I think it's more an extended thing, where I think in the movie it might be shown, but I hardly remember it, where they're outside of Tommy the bully's house after they're trying to get, or before they get, the leather-bound book, and they have a run-in with Tyler, who gets abducted by witches. Yeah, that's a whole thing in the novel that I don't think you get in the movie. When it comes to certain scenes that I think really do elevate the book here, the iconic gummy bear scene in the film, there's an added element in it that I was shocked was in it to begin with, but Sonny, he's trying to help his friend Sam with these gummy bears, and there's a scene where his fingers get stabbed, and there's blood being drawn onto the floor. I'm like, really? They're going there? And I'm like, why did this get cut out of the movie? Then I remembered, I'm like, okay, this is Sony. They probably thought they didn't want to go too hardcore with it, but still, I was shocked that that was in it. So yeah, and then the balloon spider scene that we see in the movie, there's an added element that I swear, if you really look closely at the balloon spider in the movie, it looked like it has some pop balloons, but we never see real baby spiders come out of it. To my knowledge, I don't believe they're in there. There's a scene in the book here that involves the baby spiders that is absolutely gross and actually gave me goosebumps a little bit just thinking about what was happening with them. And that was great stuff. Great stuff there. And then, most of this book, like I said, is faithful. So, until like the final act in the climax, there's not that many noticeable changes, other than there is one other thing before the change in the climax I'm going to talk about. There is a deleted scene that is actually on the bonus features of the Blu-ray here of Goosebumps 2 that shows this scene, but the movie never did. And that's the scene where the kids dress up like the Halloween 3 Season of the Witch characters. You got the pumpkin, the witch, and the skeleton guy. There's a scene with Mr. Chu where he's trying to be the mummy character. And he comes out to help him, but his bandages get ripped off and his face gets exposed, and all the monsters know that he's not an actual monster. So he's forced to retreat back into his house. That scene was not in the movie. It's actually a deleted scene. It's featured here in the book. But the last change I noticed here is in the climax of the movie, when Slappy is defeated, the Tesla Tower essentially shocks him and makes his body rotate and all that. But instead of incinerating him like the book described, he's basically yeeted up into the sky, maybe even outer space. We never see what happens to him. Because the climax resolves shortly thereafter, and what happens to Slappy, I guess, happens off screen. In the book here, it basically says, no, he was incinerated. And then the book sucked up everything else surrounding his incineration, but I don't think sucked up his incineration because the ending is still intact from the movie, and I'm not going to spoil that if you haven't seen it. So, yeah, I mean, those are the big changes that I noticed in the novel. Going back to the characters, there's also, like I said, you get more of a introspection into kind of a monologue than you do in the movie as well. So coupled with that, that makes this book not a 5 out of 5 supplement, right? If I had to rate this thing on a supplementary basis, I would say that this is like 98% faithful to the movie, but the other 2% is enough there for me to actually give this here a 4.8 out of 5 stars for a novelization, right? This is easily one of the more faithful ones, but like I said, those changes in there were obviously axed out of the movie or maybe retrogradedly added into the novel. I couldn't tell you. I haven't read the original script written by Rob Lieber, but I have a feeling that this book here was the original script, and maybe they cut some stuff out before they even shot principal photography and even started on a shooting script. Because out of all the things they added in here that's not in the movie, only one scene was featured on the deleted scenes. So that makes me think that only one of these things we talked about that you can only find in the book actually made it to the shooting script. Even that scene was cut out. So, with that being said, I mean, there's not really nothing else to say about this. Enjoyability, though, like I said, this is a 5 out of 5 all day. This is, I think, one of the best Goosebumps books ever written, and in terms of my love for it. Might be one in my top 10 whenever I get down to ranking and, I guess, making a final ranking of every Goosebumps story ever made. I don't know if that's going to be like a 10-hour video or might have to be like a few part series or something, but I think that this would probably make it in there. This was incredible. I highly recommend that you go experience this book if you haven't done so before. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Goosebumps Haunted Halloween movie novel. Let me know down in the comment section if you've read this before. Did you love it? Did you hate it? I'm dying to know. And I'll see you next time.